right. Well, looks like we might be up and running. Yeah, we've even got numbers in the icons up there, so that's good. I always have to wait that obligatory few minutes or seconds, especially when I'm using my telephone connection to the internet rather than the Wi-Fi, which is what I'm doing tonight. And it's a bad time because everybody's traveling, and kids are coming home and they're using their stuff, even on the phone internet service. But I thought I should go ahead and do this. Tonight's a night for going through the chat. Okay, as you noticed in the picture that the thumbnail that came up, I've got this cup again. It's been a while since I've brought this one. I have the Badass one from Badass Coffee Company. I have my silver cup. I have my black cup, and I have my Second Amendment cup. And I thought it was time to bring this one out again because as I'm watching everything happen, it sure proves out that I wasn't far off. And I think most of us who've been keeping an eye on things have known how all this was going to go. And the prognosis isn't good, ladies and gentlemen. It just isn't. I'd love to come on here and give you all the hope and encouragement that everything's going to be okay. But I think you can see that their goal is to take us down. Dr. Michael Yagan, rather, who used to work for Pfizer, put out a video, and it's been going pretty well viral on Twitter, where he's finally come out to admit that the powers that be, their end game is to take away everything from us and basically starve us out, if not destroy us through wars and things like that. He finally just came out and said it. I was wondering what took him so long, but he finally did. So with that little start up there of some melancholy information, here's to you all. Believe it or not, it's just spring water with ice. That's all I've got here, okay? Yeah, I do try to drink healthy things once in a while. As you can see, I've got my glasses. I've got my computer right here. So we can get into chat pretty quick. Let me just mention a few things. I just talked about Dr. Michael Yaden and what he said. I also want to bring up this situation with claiming, these people claiming that the attack on the Kremlin with the drones was a false flag by Putin himself. They're doing the same thing they did with Nord Stream, right? They're saying Russia, is attacking itself. And Russia doesn't have to do any false flags on itself. Their Putin's ratings are up like 70%. Most of the people see what's going on with NATO attacking them over all these years, encroaching on violating their agreements, NATO and the United States, etc., violating their agreements and encroaching upon Russian territory. The whole thing with the Maidan coup back in 2014 in Ukraine, which put in a puppet government from the United States, and then which started a war against the Donbass. Well, the Donbass was trying to resist it, and I understand that. But regardless, we watch as the Western Ukrainians basically were trying to force the Eastern Ukrainians to heal. And in any other country, like Kosovo, for instance, the situation with Kosovo, boy, my hair's really crazy. I'm going to be like Jackson Hinkle here, constantly looking at my hair, right? I know I look rough. We'll talk about that too. Getting back to Russia, so the United States is so hypocritical. We talk about the right of Kosovo to separate from Serbia, and now things are happening in Serbia where things aren't good there. Of course, there was a shooting there just the other day. And I don't think they're a country with Second Amendment type stuff. So where did this 14-year-old kid get this gun to gun down his classmates? Tragic, but it just shows you that if somebody wants to do violence, they will. And the only way to stop that is to be able to meet it in the same kind of force, which AOC doesn't want you to do, or any of these liberals, because like this thing with John Neely, I guess his name is, in New York, that Marine who was basically being accosted along with other people, tried to subdue this guy, and he started fighting. And the chokehold that he was using is something that police use. Normally, it won't kill you, but again, there was probably something else going on there. It may have been applied slightly incorrectly. I'm not sure. I don't know. But protecting yourself is now considered to be a crime. In a lot of places like New York, it has been. And protecting others is a crime. But the criminals have free reign. All of this is, as I told you before, is Frankfurt School, Fabian socialism, cultural Marxism, and Saul Alinsky tactics. And our country is going down the tubes. The same thing with all these newfangled things that are going on with your kids, and guys liking dresses on them, and all that kind of stuff. Uh, the Navy is invested in the film. Both films, both the 1986 version of Maverick and this last one that came out, is a good recruiting tool, right? And then they shoot themselves in the foot by having the guys like to dress up as being Navy recruiters. just you can read between the lines. I have to speak somewhat circumspectly now. The whole thing about this, I see all these former military people, retired, even active military, complaining about where's our country going, why are they doing this, why don't we stop it? And I got to tell you again, ladies and gentlemen, especially you retirees who just don't want to see it, it's intentional. It's a way to destroy not just America, the United States, but to destroy liberty, the man-woman relationship, as I've harped on for so long, etc. So we have that situation going on, and like I said, in the problem in Ukraine, it's going to be bad. Apparently, the spring offensive is now, according to the Wagner Group, it looks like it's underway. The Ukraine supposed spring offensive. However, this turns out, it's not going to be good for anybody. Okay, it's not going to be good for anybody, not in the long run. All right, a couple of other things before I get in the chat. All right, because I think I should mention them. I had a friend call me up today, a very dear friend. I've known him for a number of years. He's extremely well educated and extremely well informed politically. And he said to me, Ray, I wish you'd get back to just talking about the world situation. You're so good on understanding the military situation, the political situation, how things have gone from what it was supposed to be to this debacle that we have today. And he says, I think people would rather have that message than you talking about, your spiritual journeys, your studies, because some of that's considered radical by a lot of people, and that's probably why a lot of people aren't listening anymore. And I've noticed my numbers have dropped. And again, that's not a big deal for me. The way I look at it is, as Bettina told me a long time ago, and as I knew anyway, you shouldn't cast your pearls before swine because they will turn and rend you. Well, I'm a perfect example of that. I can talk about my subjects and people get upset, but the push for CRT and the woke crowd, et cetera, that's encouraged to be accepted and even promulgated, right? So I knew that even when I was a little kid, that the majority of people will not be on the right side. As I've often said, quoting an old sage of mine who was one of my teachers, he says, everybody wants to be right. No one wants to get right. And that's been my experience. And I've talked before about, it seems like rejection and being despised and pariah and anathema, just seems to follow those who say, there's something wrong with the story that we've been told, no matter whether it's even ecumenical, religious, spiritual, governmental, historical, whatever. All of it's twisted to benefit the very, very few at the top. And I've talked about that for a long time, and that's why I named this video Phantasm. I'm not going to tell you what Phantasm is. I think you can go look it up and you'll have an idea. No, I'm not talking about Disney's thing either. That's not what it is. Phantasm, it's really about deception, Okay, and as I've long said, we're in a really bad period of deception now, probably the worst in history as far as I'm concerned, for whatever history is. And me being a historian, I can even say that with some clout that yeah, there's definitely a problem with history as it's been passed down, no doubt about it. So at any rate, this friend of mine wanted me to stay just on military political topics. He really liked the fact that I interviewed Rich Higgins, who, if you recall Rich Higgins, and it's in the videos here, you'd have to go down quite a ways. It was back in 2018, I think, maybe 17. But at any rate, Rich Higgins was the guy who tried to warn Trump and was thrown out of the National Security Council by McMaster, General McMaster, and basically, he was, like I said, he was trying to warn Trump. Well, Rich Higgins then came on my show and I interviewed him, and my friend was saying, you know, you need to start having people like that on again. And I pointed out to him, and I'm not complaining, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just telling you why my program is the way it is now. Okay. Uh, I could probably get somebody like Rich Higgins' colleague, Stephen Coughlin, on, if you know who he is. He runs Unconstrained Analytics, extremely intelligent man. He follows me on Twitter. And I could probably get one or two others, but I don't think I could sustain it. You know, a lot of the people that even feel the way I do in some remote way that have some clout, uh, because of who I am and what I represent, what I have done, what maybe I should have done and didn't do, whatever. You know, it's not something that they're going to take me up on, and I've already tried that on several occasions. So I told my friend that today, and then here's the bottom line, ladies and gentlemen. My concern shifted from saying that there are all these problems, which I still do, to we need to have an understanding that we have to return to our core. And when I say spiritual, some people think that what I'm talking about is some ethereal thing out there in space, you know, that's not corporeal, that's, you know, you can't touch it, you know, it just floats around, you know, it's like a spirit type thing. Even spirits aren't non corporeal, that's kind of a mistake too. But at any rate, um, I use the word spiritual, but what I'm talking about when I say it is our conscience understanding of right and wrong. Okay, you don't want to have something done to you that you wouldn't do, or you wouldn't want somebody to do to you what uh, uh, you wouldn't do to them. Well, I said that wrong. Treat others as you want to be treated. I said it wrong. Um, in other words, a lot of the things that we see in the world right now, for instance, are forcing you to have to accept listening to somebody that you don't want to listen to. Read between the lines. You may not want to listen to me, but I'm not forcing you to be here. I'm not the government saying you have to accept this guy, because if you don't, it's going to be hate speech on your part. I'm not demanding that. I never have and I never will. So taking this a step further, what I'm saying is that I'll cover these topics as I do, you know, often, but I went to the spiritual side as well, even if you don't want to hear it. Just the exercise of those types of discussions help us in our spiritual development. We don't even have to agree with each other. As a matter of fact, we shouldn't probably, because that's too easy. I heard Michael Heiser, Dr. Michael Heiser, at one point saying it's very true. He said, faith is not irrationality. If you have an irrational belief in something, that's not faith, no matter how much you think it is. And I think that's the way I've been trying to explain it as well. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things unseen. We don't always get answers. Legitimate answers, no. And I don't like it any more than anybody else. But I've had a lot of no's from dad up there, from father, a lot of no's, you know. And it's frustrating. But again, and I don't share exactly all the same concepts that you know, Michael Heiser did. And if you don't know who Michael Heiser is, I've talked about him before. Yeah, he's Dr. Michael Heiser. He's a linguist, a scriptorian, biblical scholar, et cetera, et cetera. And I followed him after my son Jeremy put me onto him, and he's just a wonderful guy. He passed away now about 2 months ago from cancer. At any rate, all that background. So what I'm saying is, if we just talk about those negative things all the time, that's where our mindset's going to be. And we've got to be able to do the positive things. And that is trying to discover who we are, where we come from, what we're doing here, and where we're going. And none of us are going to have that right. None of us. I don't care if it's the Pope, the Mormon prophet, or the seer down the street. And I know a couple of those, not close by, but, you know, God doesn't tell us what is, I mean, he does kind of tell us what's going on, but he doesn't let us in on the program completely. And it's troubling sometimes. I've talked about the loss of my wife, Carol. I mean, that was probably the most, that and the loss of my 15-year-old daughter, Rachel. You know, I've lost my mom, my dad, my brother, a lot of good friends. You know, my first wife died from a heart attack. No, I didn't give it to her. It was just a few years ago. That's another story as well. But the point is, I've lost a lot of these close loves and relationships. And you know, I've asked God a couple times. Said, "Man, you know, can't we kind of work something out here?" You know, and I don't get that answer. And my old sage told me the same thing at one point in time. He said, you know, you're going to have to be left to your own devices. Despite what the Christians say about salvation, I'm not talking about that. You know, God's mercy is going to have to be pretty magnanimous in a lot of ways, but that doesn't mean that we aren't responsible for something in our lives, that we have to do something. That's what real belief in Hebrew means, is doing something. So you can't just rely on just somebody else doing it for you. You got to put in some sort of an effort. How much? That's Dad determines that, and I've talked about that before. Okay, so the point is that that's why I get into these spiritual discussions quite a bit, and I've already spent too much time on that on this one, but I wanted to explain to you. If you don't like it, that's fine. Don't and maybe I shouldn't be casting my pearls before swine, because a lot of you have turned and rent me. Not necessarily people here tonight, but you know, over the course of the years, especially when I kind of, well, I mean, I was getting attacked by the intelligence community back when I was revealing things before everybody else was, or before too many people were. And again, it goes back to now I have this to remind myself that, you know, I was right on. But a lot of people, you know, like I've said many times, they like to throw the words heretic at me and blasphemer and things like that. And they're using the words totally incorrectly, number one. Number two, that's not it. I'm on a search. And I'm not going to have a faith that's irrational. Enough of that. I think that's enough. Another part of the phantasm, and then we'll move on. I mentioned another night on the video that I don't understand the videos and the things that we hear that are going on in Ukraine, between Ukraine and Russia and NATO and all that. And that some of those things, from my military mind, don't add up. They don't make sense. And I think what I should do is I should tell you one of the reasons why. Well, I said the other night one reason. You don't have an observation post, a listening post. You don't have a platoon out there, or even a squad go out on a long-range reconnaissance patrol. That's what they called it in my day. I'm not sure what they call it now. But before they go on that LRP, that reconnaissance patrol, they meet up with the Fire Direction Center. In other words, the artillery people. And they map out predetermined fires. So any place where they think they might have a problem, they have a predetermined fire for that location. And all they got to do is say, hey, hit that coordinate there that's already set in your system, because we've got people coming in on us. That's how easy it is, all right? And what they do then is, if it's not exactly on that exact spot, then they can basically direct the fires, giving new coordinates, or, you know, raise up, go to the left, go to the right, you know, windage and elevation kind of thing, just to make it easy for everybody here. There's no excuse for these units being out there without any artillery support or fire support. There just isn't any reason, and that's beyond my comprehension. So anyway, that's the first reason I brought that up. But I also realize, and again, another reason for this being called phantasm, I used to say that you could believe what you hear and half of what you see. And then I changed with the way things have been going to I said, you can believe half of what you hear and nothing of what you see. And now it's at the point where you can't trust anything with the AI, with the fake, deep fakes and all these things and the CGI and all this. You can't believe anything you see. So here's another reason why I said what I said the other night, and I'm elaborating on it a little bit more, and then I promise to go to chat, okay? A lot of, most of these are Ukrainian. They come onto YouTube and Twitter and other places, and they show different photographs and videos of action that are supposedly happening in Ukraine. I don't have the pictures in the description box. I'm not going to add them to this video. And the reason why I'm not is because they're probably copyrighted. And if I went that far, they probably also get upset at me for some other reasons. But I got to tell you what I found out when I did a study of these photographs and these videos. Just as an example of one, the Ukrainians said that they took out this tank, a Russian tank. And they have a picture of it supposedly from a drone, okay, that helped to bring in the fire to take out this tank. I think it hit a mine first, supposedly, and then artillery came. And you can see the Russian bodies laying all around outside of it. A Russian tank crew is usually 3 to 4 people, not 5 like our Abrams, okay? At any rate. Well, as I looked at the bodies that were on the ground, I noticed something very peculiar. They were all in the exact same position lying on the ground. The only difference between them was that instead of facing this way, some of them were facing the other way. But let's say that this leg is bent here. Let's say that these are their legs and one's bent like that. So you see one laying on the ground like this. And then on the other side, they're laying this way. All right? Didn't mean to do that. The point is, they were mirror images of the show. It was the same picture put on there 4 times, maybe 5. It was at least 4. And it was the exact same, those bodies were lying in exactly the same position, except reversed to make it look like it was different. And it wasn't. It was the same computer-generated image reversed. Somebody got lazy. So what the hell's going on over here? Well, the first casualty of war is truth. I think we all know that. I've certainly said it for many years. And of course, we're seeing that. The lies out of D.C., the lies out of Kyiv, even the lies out of Russia, although I find myself that there are fewer coming from there. Most of those are in fact, in my estimation, tied to the military operation itself, not trying to seduce and deceive our own people or their own people, whichever. There's always a little bit of that, but this is getting out of hand. When you can see this, and I don't know who generated this video and these photographs, but a lot of that doesn't get out without the Ukraine government and the United States government okay. So what's going on? So that's why I called this phantasm. There are just too many things that we can't believe. So what's the answer? Prep, pray, stay out of the way. Keep your situational awareness on high. Keep your eyes on the horizon, ears to the ground. Keep your buddies close. Don't go with that thing. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. No, bullshit. No. You only want people around you that you can trust. And that's going to be hard enough, as I explained in the last video as well. That's going to be hard enough. That's all I got to say on all those topics. I've already taken too much time, 25 minutes, good grief. Here we go. Going to get on this. Propaganda, fear, lies. That's right, fear. the evil side works on fear because they know that that's a motivator for their deal. They tore down those towers on Jesus's birthday. They tore down those towers on Jesus. Oh yeah. That's right. The bodies looked fake. Yeah, Herd Tender, you must be knowing what I'm talking about. Well, they weren't. They were obviously computer generated and then just switched around to make them look like, they're laying differently, and they really weren't. Okay, let me go back a little bit. Jade Helm, yeah, that's a biblical truther YouTube channel, Jade Helm vid, yeah, Jade Helm, and that's still operational. Okay, that's what Palantir and all that other stuff is. Um, uh, Spatial intelligence, all that stuff. Yeah. Judith Lear, that's okay. Your faith isn't shallow. My belief is strong in Christ. That's okay. My point is that we have to believe in something greater than ourselves. We certainly can't trust Trump. We can't trust Biden. You can't trust Putin. I almost said Putin. Putin. Okay. No, you really do have to have this connection, and it's not necessarily hard, but it's hard to keep. I think we have it as a child easier than we have it as an adult. Now, I might disagree with you on what Christ is, or that you might have a more narrow interpretation of that than I do. But I think, by and large, it's certainly better than being a Baphomet worshiper, and that might sound that's probably not quite the way I should put it. But the point is, as I mentioned in a video the other day, even though Christians don't like what I have to say, I'd much rather be in the company of Christians than of devil worshippers. Okay? So I understand what you're saying, and that's good. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that's a good thing. Okay, yeah, Colonel McGregor. Yeah, if anybody, you should keep track of what Colonel McGregor says. He's right on it. All right. Oh, hi, Jesse. You're here. Nice to see you. You always show up to give me a little encouragement and let me know that I'm not alone. I appreciate that very much, Jesse. You put up, as usual, a lot of good videos. I try to forward a lot of them on Twitter. As a matter of fact, I think you know that. Yeah, Trump is from the tribe of Dan. Yeah. I think we've already figured that out. All the indications are there, and there's some other things about that which I won't get into tonight. I did a video about it actually about 2 years ago, if I remember correctly. Harry Smith, I don't want to get into the subject. Look. Baal just means Lord, okay? It can mean husband. Go look at your Strongs. Go look at your Gesenius. It doesn't just mean the god Baal. And I'm not going to say much more about it than that. It's sort of like the argument of, oh, there's no J in Hebrew, so we shouldn't say Jesus. No. Man, we're really straining at a gnat and swallowing a camel. I don't mean to pick on you, Harry, because you say a lot of good things, and I'm not saying you don't. But go look at all the uses for Baal. Okay? It doesn't necessarily mean the Canaanite god Baal. Okay? It doesn't necessarily mean that. But anyway, I'm not here to talk about that. No, that's not true either. It's an insult to use it to refer to Yeshua. Oh, no, it is not. No, it is not. It depends on the context. It depends on the context. All right. Yeah, Ravenly Wolfheart, that's exactly right. We're burning through. I remember back in the '80s when we were talking about the Russian army, and we thought that, well, we were told that we had to be there at the Fulda Gap, to keep the Russians from coming through and invading. They never really had any intention of doing that. It was all BS, just for the military-industrial complex, as I said before. And then what happened? Well, obviously, even with NATO, not spending the military money that they needed to keep armed, they depended on the U.S. We didn't even keep up with it, and the stuff that we put out is substandard. A lot of it doesn't even work. So Russia's right. They know where our logistics is. Our logistics suck. I mean, we can get something from A to B, but getting it in the first place is the problem. And we've lost that ability. And we did it because people are stealing from us. My battery's going dead, and I was waiting for it to do this. So let me plug this in. I know this happens a lot, and I cause some aggravation with you guys for doing it like this. But okay, oops, sorry. There we are. All right. Yeah, Sweet Polly Purebred, you're asking about the coffins. You're talking about those plastic ones, I think. Yeah, I followed that for a while. I think Jesse Ventura did a show about that, as a matter of fact. I think that's still in place, but they've got other methods now. I hate to tell you, they got other methods now. I'm not even sure that's something we'd have to be concerned with as far as those are. And a lot of people said, well, no, they're just used for, the regular mausoleums and burials and stuff like that. Well, that was sure an awful lot of them in those different places, and I know what you're talking about. Two sticks become one. Well, what's that, Timothy Graff? It says that the Ezekiel explains that, and it's been misinterpreted in my estimation in a number of ways. Basically, what it means is what I've referred back to, and damn, here we are on spiritual stuff again. In Genesis, Jacob blesses Judah and says that he shall have the scepter and a lawgiver between his feet until Shiloh comes. So, in other words, what we're talking about is Judah and Israel had a rift, and that those sticks, they will be brought back together, and it's going to have to do with the writings as well, probably the Samaritans, okay, and the extant diaspora of the Israelites, if you're going through the Bible. So yeah, it's the reconciliation, and it'll all come under Shiloh at some point, which is Ephraim, according to Genesis. I'm just telling you what Genesis is. I don't care about the arguments and then the Nevi'im and the Ketuvim and all that about who's what, and God likes Israel, the northern kingdoms this time, and he hates them now, and now he wants Judah, and now he hates Judah, and he's going back to Israel. Forget all that. That's why I stick with, really, Genesis is my big book. And people say, well, there are problems with that too. And okay, I don't want to get into that tonight, but at any rate, here we go. Find the real Christians. I'll tell you who the real Christians are. A person that's not going to call you a heretic and a blasphemer because you don't believe the same way they do. That's a Christian. A person that'll help somebody. I saw a video the other day. I didn't mean to. I don't have these things deliberately waiting on my line on YouTube. But they'll send me stuff, right? And there's this one about gold diggers, women. Women. The idea of hypergamy. They're always looking to trade up to the next guy rather than having working together with a man to build. They want it all right up front. That's the idea of hypergamy. So there's this thing on gold digging, and this was really incredible. This guy pretended to be homeless. He was rich himself. He drives a Lamborghini or something like that. But he kind of does what Mark Dice does. Mark Dice goes out and talks to people and gives them things that we need to get rid of hydrogen dioxide. It's in the atmosphere. Well, hydrogen. I'm sorry, dihydrous oxide, which is water. Dihydrogen oxide. It just means H2O, but they didn't know what it was, so they said, yeah, they were all signing these petitions to do away with water because it's a terrible substance, right? Well, this guy was kind of doing a lot of that same thing. He's testing these women, and some of them failed the test, but this one, I'll never forget. It was so incredible. She herself had a very nice car. I don't remember what kind it was, but it was, a vet, something like that. And she was a 10, a number 10 on the scale. I know women don't like to hear that, but from 1 to 10, she was a 10. Okay, blonde, tall, all that, nicely shaped, all that. And he's sitting there and he's pretending to be this homeless person, and he stops her. He says, "Hey, can I get a little help here? I'm down on my luck and all that." And she pulls out $100 bill and gives it to him and says, "Have a nice day." Starts to walk away, and he's startled. So he gets up and he runs over to her and he says, "Look, that's my car there, that Lamborghini, that's mine. I've really got the money. I'm just out here, doing this little experiment, and I want to give you your $100 back because I really don't need it. But you passed the test superbly." So somebody mentioned the other night when I was talking about this situation with women in Isaiah 4 and their tinkling and their pride and all that. And somebody wrote down, there are women out there that aren't like that. Well, I know that. That's why I showed the picture of Carol. That's why I talked to her about her so much, because she was like the Proverbs lady. So I know they're out there, but they're getting harder and harder to find, at least in my estimation. And these other guys too, or they wouldn't be doing these tests. So at any rate, he explained all that to her, and she said, "Well, yeah, I try to help everybody I can." And he's told her, says, "You're rare, and here's my card." Okay, he did do that, but there was a woman apparently very well off, but at the same time had a heart of gold. So they're there, and I know they are. So anyway, that's how you know who a Christian is. Okay, by their fruits you will know them, not by what they say, not how they dress, what they do. By their fruits you will know them. So where is salvation based upon faith alone in the normal idea that God's going to save you as long as you say you believe in Jesus, that he's your Savior? Well, that's not what Jesus said. Apparently, by their fruits you will know them, if they're real or not. In other words, they do something. They don't just say, "I'm a Jesus follower." Like, there's even a story in the New Testament about that, about that it's wrong, that when a person who needs something comes up to you and asks for it, and you say to them, "Be warm and filled. See you later." Doesn't work. You got to do something. Okay. I didn't mean to get on that. That's not what we're here for tonight. Space Force is the excuse for the catching away. Oh, and that's another thing. Oh, hey, so you're rocking a 5-week-old husky? You got a 5-week-old puppy, Jesse? Outstanding. A daughter of mine just got a miniature collie. Oh, what a cool dog. So I'm sure that husky is bringing you a lot of joy. Good for you. All right, let's see. Space Force we were talking about. Yeah, something's going on there. I've often said that all these programs like Mars Attacks, which is kind of a spoof, if you know about that, Jack Nicholson and those guys back in the 90s. But then you have, all these other, like the War of the Worlds, all those. They always show the aliens as being bad guys. Well, to the nations, they are the bad guys because they threaten their power. Just like the real Jesus coming back and saying, "You guys are done," of course they're going to say he's the enemy. So yeah, we have to have discerning eyes and hearts, for sure. Barbara Bebout. Well, I don't know if you know the real reason why I've been doing this. I've been taking part in something, and I needed to look rough for it, but I am probably going to keep at least this part. I'm feeling in real good over in here. Well, this I keep shaved to kind of give an emphasis right here. My hair, I'm not used to having hair this long, but I'm going to let it go a little bit longer, and then I'll probably get it trimmed up. But I am going to probably keep this part, so we'll see. But thank you, I appreciate that. Yeah, we are in Sodom and Gomorrah. We're in Egypt. We're in Babylon, and it's getting worse. There are people that are starting to stand up. I'm not saying that I'm giving a testimony of Ron DeSantis. A lot of things that he's doing are pretty good. I do have a problem with him encroaching on the First Amendment with his saying that, talking about certain people, in this little country over in this section of the world, and some of the things they do is hate speech. No, it's not. It's just not. I understand this law that he signed has something to do with private property, but why do they have to do it just for those people? It's the law anyway. You can't go on anybody's private property and do something they don't want you to do. So why concentrate on that, and why make that an issue? That's reverse discrimination. That's wrong on his part. He's probably doing it for funds or whatever else. I don't know. Everybody tries to kowtow to those people. I don't. I know them too well. I've studied them for years. I know them too well, and there are good ones. They're true Udites. I'll put it that way. There are true ones, but regardless, by their fruits you will know them. If you have Twitter, you need to go follow Torah Jews. Torah Jews. They're Jewish, uh, at least by faith. I don't know by nationality. I'm not certain about that. I think by the way they present things, they would be against a Jewish state. As a matter of fact, I'm sure of that because they're very much against that idea. But the Torah Jews will tell you how they look at it. And let me show you this so you know what I'm talking about. People see I have these books and they say, "Really, are you Jewish?" They've seen me with my talit, which is not a big deal. It's a talit. Really, all it is, it's that little thing the Jews wear when they're praying and all that stuff. You're not supposed to wear it all the time. Really, what it is, it's a portable tabernacle, place for you to close in and be with God. That's really all it is. I have a lot of respect for Torah. I'm suspect of some of it, of course. Like I said, Genesis is my mainstay. The rest of it, I realize there were arguments about that over time. But at any rate, and then a lot of the rest of the Bible is political, and I get a lot of people upset when I say things like that. But that's my experience. That's what I've learned. So at any rate, yeah, we're Sodom and Gomorrah and Egypt and Babylon. That's from Annie 01. I mean, look what we're doing. Look at this guy who's now the recruiter for the Navy. You know what I'm talking about? Go on Twitter and watch this dude. And if he wants to be like that, that's fine. But don't. The government shouldn't be promoting, promulgating, enhancing, encouraging that, and then coming against people who don't want to have anything to do with that. Especially when they try to do this with the kids, it's just wrong. It shows you how bad we are. That's when God really got so upset. I used to ask, why did he just? Well, again, this is biblical stuff, so take it however you want. But the total destruction of some of the Canaanites, men, women, children, cows, goats, sheep, everything alive they killed. Why? I used to scratch my head. Why do you do that? Look what we're doing here. How polluted and corrupted everything is becoming. If you don't separate out of it, in one way or another, you'll become a part of it. And you'll become corrupted and polluted too. And of course, if you are successful in pulling out of it at any degree, then you're considered an enemy, an extremist. Wasn't all this prophesied? Yeah, I'm preaching again. I don't mean to do that. Sorry about that. All right. Oh, hi, Felicia. Yeah, you're here too. Bless you. You at BP Earthwatch. I don't know what happened to all my other moderators. I know it had a lot to do with, first of all, my suspicions on Trump. I know that was part of it. And now, not just my suspicions, but he proves it every day. Um, and I know it was also because of my what would be considered radical um, uh, approach to biblical type things, and in particular Jesus in particular. And again, I'm not here to make followers, supporters, or whatever. But I think some of my moderators got a little uptight with the way that I explain things. I mean, to talk about Jesus being married is like in traditional Christianity. that's blasphemy. That's heresy. You go to hell for saying that. But like I've explained, if he was here to do what a man would do and yet overcome everything, and especially obey the commandments, you can't get around the for this cause shall a man leave his father and mother and cleave unto his wife, and they shall become one flesh. And an added bonus to that, multiply and replenish the earth, be fruitful, and multiply and replenish the earth. He wouldn't have avoided that. If he did, by definition in the Old Testament, he could not be the Messiah. Okay, but a lot of people got upset with that. So I think a lot of my moderators, and Jesse wouldn't entirely agree with me with what I just said. I know he wouldn't. Felicia Lockhart maybe a little more. She's into Hebraic things quite a bit. But I know you also have a lot of understanding of the Jesus thing too, Felicia. So, and really, it has to be an individual thing. When you start getting, it's good to get together and to share things. That's what the community is, the ecclesia, which is translated church these days. It's just a community. The Dead Sea Scroll area in Qumran, if you read the Dead Sea Scrolls, they called themselves not the church. They called themselves the community, ecclesia in Greek. They didn't speak Greek. It wasn't Greek that they were. They may have known Greek, but that's not what they used. It was community. And that's what ecclesia in Greek means. Ecclesia in Greek means church, community. It actually means community. So wherever two or more are gathered in my name, there will I be also. That's a community. You may not agree on everything, but you're there discussing things that have to do with eternal truths. You may not understand them. You may be way off course, but you're discussing them and you're sharing your ideas. You're giving each other food for thought. But to turn around and call somebody a blasphemer or a heretic because they don't agree with you, yeah, it's pretty dangerous. I wouldn't do that, and that's why I caution people not to do it. And I call people out when they call me that because they really don't know what they're talking about. Okay, let's see what else we got here. Yeah. You know what I'm talking about, Felicia, with those shorts of the gold diggers. Yeah, some of them are really funny. I won't waste a lot of time on that, but let's keep going here and see what we got. Yeah, Harry Smith. Now, I don't know who you're talking to there. Somebody by name Annie, probably Annie 101 or whatever her name is. Yeah, that's actually true. What Harry Smith here says is, and I'm not sure Felicia would like this, okay, but it says, very good, Annie. So actually, the bulk of what was scriptural Israel was long gone before the Babylonian captivity. Well, I'll say this. By the time of the Babylonian captivity, they didn't know what their genealogies were. They had lost a lot. They had changed from the Paleo Hebrew to the Block Hebrew. Why did they do that? If God wrote in Thamudic, which is, there have been some studies on what the original language was that God supposedly wrote. That was the wrong thing to say. That God wrote the Ten Commandments on. The original language, I could give you a lot of background on that, but it would take too long again. But scholars have determined it was Thamudic, was the type of script it was. And I was under the impression, I've even talked about this on my religion series, and I think I've mistaken. But this was common amongst scholars. A lot of scholars thought that the Paleo Hebrew actually came from the Phoenicians. Well, now it turns out that that's exactly opposite. It went from Thamudic there at Mount Horeb, which has been confused with Sinai and all that stuff. But anyway, that's another story. Horeb is in Arabia. Mount Sinai is in the Sinai Peninsula. But apparently it was Mount Horeb that all this happened. There's some indications even in the Bible that was the case. But anyway, that's another story. Archaeologists that went there found this language, this alphabet, which apparently was the first alphabet, not the first writing. The first writing, of course, as we know, was at least as far back as the Sumerian cuneiform, right? So writing existed before that, but it was still kind of, it wasn't really phonetic. It wasn't like you could put those things together and make a single concept. That happened with the alphabet, which apparently the first one was Thamudic, which they say is what God wrote on the tablets with. Okay, and then that was eventually, for a reason that I call into question, I'd like to talk to the scholars who have studied this and ask them, if God wrote something, why would you change the way you write the alphabet? It would seem, why are you trying to improve on God's handy, script? Doesn't make any sense. But anyway, it moved from Thalmudic to Paleo Hebrew, and then from Paleo Hebrew, it actually went out from there to Phoenician, to Greek, etc., etc. The alphabets did. Okay, not that there wasn't writing before that, but there was no alphabet before that. That the Hebrew was, in fact, the first alphabet, and the ancient Hebrew, even before the Paleo, was what was called Thalmudic. Wow, I get into things, don't I? I go way down the rabbit holes. At least it shows you, I study a lot. I know a lot of this information, right? Okay, let's see here. Yeah, Harry Smith, that's true, and that's why I don't especially Isaiah. Harry Smith says Yeshua taught from the prophets mainly. Well, that's true, but when he was saying that, he was also talking about the patriarchs: Abraham, Isaac, Adam, Noah, Enoch, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. So you can include the Genesis there as well. And he referred, at least in the New Testament, he refers to Levitical law. All right, he does do that. And I have some questions on that issue. Okay, I'm not going to go there tonight. I've talked about it before. But yeah, he definitely quoted Isaiah. He quoted Zechariah. He quoted Jeremiah. Um, yeah, and not so. I'm not saying that I put those aside. Especially, I don't toss Isaiah at all. I've talked about Malachi, especially Malachi 4. A lot. Um, Zechariah, I'm not certain that Zechariah is as messianic as a lot of people would like to say it is, in the sense of the first century. But that's you know, as long as our hearts are good, we're going to find out about all this stuff eventually. And I think it's going to be different than any of us know. We're all sitting in our little spot here where we feel comfortable, and we don't want our little foundation shaken. I think we're all going to have our foundation shaken. And we're going to look at each other and say, I'm so sorry I tried to bend you to my way of thinking. I even tried to use force on that. I'm sorry I did that. Mere speech, sometime, as the woke people say, can be a method of force. It depends on how it's used. Um, they do it, right? So, we're going to say, I should have guarded my words a little better, and I admit even I should. So anyway, I'm spending too much time on that. Let's see what we got here. Um, Annie, you're in Kansas City, and crime is off the charts. It's that way. Look what Oregon's now doing. Oregon's coming down with new gun laws. They're doing everything they can to disarm the American people. I heard. I haven't checked this yet. I saw it on Twitter today. I've not verified it, so I'm not telling you it's an absolute fact. But I saw where I think it was on Stu Peters, if I'm not mistaken. It was on a tweet from Stu Peters. He has a thing there from somebody in Brazil who said that the federal government, the Army, and the federal police are now confiscating all firearms. With the crime wave there and the police not being able to take care of it, why would you disarm the people? They can take care of the criminals. You just got to let them do it and stop protecting them like AOC is doing to this guy in New York that got taken out on the subway. This is ridiculous. But that's what they do. Evil is called good and good is called evil. And that's why I called this video Phantasm, which is another way of saying it's deceit. It's not real. It's pseudo, all that. I'm not a blood libel guy, Harry Smith. I'm not, because I understand the real history. That temple that was built by Herod was an abomination. He had no business having that built. He wasn't even a Udite. He was an Edomite. So there are a lot of problems with, and boy, the Jews will hate this. But it's in my book, The Crimson Thread. Herod built that. It was the refurbishment of the second temple, and he put his hands to it. So it was defiled before Jesus even got there. I'm not a blood libel Jew. I don't think that the Jews, in the sense of the Judahites, the Israelite people, I don't label all Israelites under the Jewish banner. That's incorrect, and it's wrong. And the Jews, Judahites, did not kill Jesus. Even in the biblical account, it was Herod, who was an Edomite Arab. It was Caiaphas, who was from Egypt, wasn't even Jewish. He was put there by Herod under the banner of the Roman emperor, and by Pilate. The real Jews did not kill Jesus. Blood libel is wrong. If you want to say that the Herodian Jews, who, as Jesus said, those who say they are Jews but are not, but are the synagogue of Satan, that's who we're talking about. Herod and his people. Caiaphas. Ananias. The one that basically did James in. So I'm not a blood libel guy. Rome and their puppets, the Herodians, are who killed Jesus, not the people of Judea, and not Israelites, certainly. Zeke, I told you. Some people like the way I look and others don't. Look, I'm doing something where I need this, okay? That's on. I kind of hinted towards it a few times. I'm approaching a point now. We're almost done where I'll be able to trim it up because I really don't care for this long a hair. This, I'll trim this up. This I'm going to keep. I think it's. I kind of like it now that I've done this. So I'll probably keep it for a while. So you're not going to change my mind by telling me I don't look good. I don't like this. You put on a hat when you've got long hair. You look like Bozo the Clown, yeah. Some people say I look like Bozo anyway, but I don't want to, add to that. Yeah, sweet Polly purebred, that's good. We humble ourselves every day and we seek repentance. That's good. I like that. Ray got a special forces look going on. Well, you're assuming a lot there, but I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Hiram Abiff is a good book to read. Well, Hiram Abiff, of course, is a Masonic thing, and actually it goes back to the Phoenician, the guy from Tyre, I believe, is where he was from, Hiram, who Solomon put in charge of the temple building. Yeah, yeah. And then he was, according to the legend, even other things. There were people that conspired to kill him because they wanted to know the secrets. Oh, that's nice of you, Felicia. I hope you're talking about me. You're saying, I love you, darling, and I hear. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, exactly, Jesse. And I think that's been my point. The two great commandments: love God and love uh, your fellow man as yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. Yeah. Okay, let's see. Hold on here. Envy Me Greatly says, Julie Otten question and answer. That's a good question. Hopefully, Lieutenant Colonel Pine can see it. Let's see. Let me see if I can find that. Julie Otten. Oh, here we go. I guess this is what you're talking about. Again, I didn't want this to be a spiritual discussion. See, my friend's going to say, see, Roy, you entertain those people and you lose everybody else. Well, I'm not really concerned about my numbers, but I do want people to be aware of what's going on, both spiritually and temporally in the physical world. I do. So that's why I cover both. But I will answer this. Roy, did God have a name before the name God? And where did they come upon the name God? You're trying to trick me. God is an office. The closest in Hebrew to God as the name is El, Eloah, or Elohim. And Elohim is actually the plural, meaning gods. But there are other gods prior to Elohim. I don't deny that. I don't think the Jews deny that. And what I mean by other gods is gods that were worshipped. And if you listen to Michael Heiser, he talks about that these were real gods. They really were. But that Yahweh, as he pronounces it, I don't think that's the right pronunciation, but that's nothing to argue about here. Yahweh was the God of all the gods. Well, Baal worshippers say Baal's the God of all gods, right? Moloch worshippers say Moloch is the God of all gods. So it's an argument. But I understand the ancient history, and I mentioned a case where Neith, the ancient goddess of the Sumerians, the very first one, was the female god creator of the universe, Neith. Wow. Well, interesting enough, her name shows up in the name Zaphnath-Paneach. Do you know who that is, Julie? And you probably can't answer me here, but I'm going to ask you if you know who Zaphnath-Paneach is. Who is Zaphnath-Paneach? And the key there is Zaphnath. The name of Neith is even in his name. Do you know who that is? Lori Tillman said it, Joseph of Egypt, the revealer of dreams. So the honor of Neith was even considered in Joseph's time, and when he was named Zaphnath-Paneach, he didn't object. So Neith still had, it was misunderstood probably by then, because I've often talked about the male and female of God. People don't want to hear that. Matter of fact, when I talked about Jesus being married, I had one guy write me. He said, no, Jesus isn't going to come down here to get a little tush. He's not going to do it. And I had to tell him, I said, well, then you disobeyed the first commandment, first couple of commandments, and he's not going to do that. That's my viewpoint. And I think I can argue that definitively in eternity. Okay. What? Greg Williams says the elders, what? The elders at Arby's are puny, had 4, and I am still hungry. Elders, you must be talking into your chat, the voice thing. You must mean the sliders. The sliders at Arby's are puny. I've never had one. I couldn't tell you, but I don't disbelieve you. I'm sure that's true. Vedic Warrior, yeah, I see a lot of your posts, Vedic Warrior. You have a lot of good things, but you see, I don't object to looking at other people's concepts. You want me to go read The Physics of God by Joseph Selby if you want a challenge to your depth and breadth of cognition as relates to the Bible, and just your vocabulary there. I can tell that you're quite well read and intelligent, educated. But you see, let me talk to you about this. I'm not going to address that directly, but I'm going to address something else. There's a guy, I can't remember his name, but he's the CEO of the Maharishi's Institute. I'm not even sure where it is, but I saw his stuff here the other day, and I'm sorry I don't remember his name. Julie, you're very welcome. Julie Alton, you're very welcome. And I can't remember his name. He speaks very eloquently. and he's the president of that university, and he's a physics. He has a PhD in physics, so he can talk about this subject. And you're going to talk about the physics of God. I'll tell you what this guy says, okay? And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because you may have even sent me that information, Vedic Warrior. If it wasn't you, somebody sent me the link to his stuff, which I had not seen before, and I went through it in quite a bit of detail. And this is what I'll say about it. They are presenting that the origin of consciousness comes from the unified field, intimating that the unified field is God. That's a physics concept. The unified field is something that everything is linked to. There isn't anything that isn't a part of the unified field. He even explains, this guy, and I can't remember his name. Maybe somebody here can put John Hagelin. Thank you, Vedic Warrior. Yeah, Maharishi International University. So it was you that sent me the information. Thank you very much. Yeah, John Hagelin. And I've listened to many of his discourses now. For a lot of different subjects, but he talks about this, and I think you know what I'm talking about here. So the physics of God, he talks about this unified field that bubbles. It's like ginger ale. The bubbles come up, and that some of the bubbles go on and do something, and others just pop and go out of existence and go back down into the soup, the unified field. Basically, that's the concept. And what this is a scientific, attempted science, and I'm not saying it's totally wrong. I'm no physicist, but there are a couple of problems with that viewpoint. And not so much problems, but maybe it needs to be explained a little further. The unified field is everything, and in their explanations, especially with the Maharishi and the whole idea of nirvana and of the one, it's using physics to try to explain the concept of nirvana, of the one, and I might add that, and I don't know that he's ever talked about this, but I think what I could prove is that concept of the unified field is what was known by people like Isaac Newton, etc., as being the ether, and by Christians as the Holy Spirit, even Israelites, the Holy Spirit. They didn't call it that, the Ruach HaKodesh, but you get the idea. So I don't mind the fact that physics is taking this and saying, yeah, there is this, and he ties in string theory and all that. My concept, and this is not going to be something a lot of people want to hear, and it's not Mormon, so people think it is, but it isn't. The unified field has always existed. I can't explain that. I'm not going to try to. A lot of people will say, well, it was in the mind of God, and then God created it. And well, according to the physics thing, the unified field is what is the start of the whole thing. The way I understand it, Vedic Warrior. No nirvana in Vedic tradition. Yeah, that's new. But I'm just talking about the nirvana concept. A lot of people that believe the nirvana concept. The Vedic tradition would be more of the oneness, right? You might have to correct me on that. But the point is that there was this source, and it's a singularity. It's not a duality, right? But it creates duality, right? Down the line. Well, that's okay. I can deal with that. My concept of where this goes as far as God is concerned, no, the Vedic Warrior would be the ether that Isaiah would understand. That would, Isaac Newton. I'm talking about the way this thing that they knew was there, but they couldn't figure it out. Don't discount the idea that people like Isaac Newton had to call it the ether, and they didn't define it quite the same way. I understand that because they didn't have physics that far down the road. But in those days, that's what they would consider it to be. Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So we're on the same page, Vedic Warrior. You see, I'm just throwing everything in here to say that I think that the idea of the unified field is probably correct. However, I do believe, and I think it's manifest here in the world, but we don't want to consider that because, oh, this is the flesh and this is the physical and yuck, yuck, yuck. Well, the fact of the matter is that this is what is here, and it's for our benefit and our education, our experience, right? My consideration is that there was a superior intelligence, a superior entity that didn't create the unified field, but came into perfect unity with it. What I mean by unity is not that it didn't participate in duality, but that the principles of that unified field it took to itself, and then it was able to do a lot of other work. And I'll just put it that way. I'm being kind of vague in that regard. Yeah, and that's true, Vedic Warrior. And I think, well, there's another way to look at it too. Vedic Warrior says, I regard consciousness as fundamental. I regard matter as derivative of consciousness. There are people that will say this, and I think it's right. Consciousness, our minds aren't where consciousness is. It's not. Our minds are not what make us conscious. Consciousness is downloaded into us, and that's what you would be saying here, Vedic Warrior. Oops, I lost the Max Planck idea. Let me get this back here. That consciousness is fundamental, and that matter is a derivative of consciousness. And I think I would have to agree with that. Okay? But it's a natural progression of creation. It's not something to be despised and considered despicable. No, it's a natural progression of creation. That's how I look at it. Yeah, and they talk about the Holy Spirit and Sophia and all that, and I don't want to get into that tonight. But anyway, yeah. So, and then he said something else here. There we are. This is what I was looking for. Vedic Word says, yes, a superior entity, intelligence, unity, unified field, singular consciousness, and there was one entity that it had produced that was perfectly in line with it. And that kind of goes along with the concept of the Adam Kadmon in the Jewish tradition. If you know what I'm talking about, Vedic Warrior. A lot of people don't know what I'm talking about, but that's what it is. All right, okay. All right, let's go on to some other things here because we're going up on an hour and 15 minutes, and I don't want to keep everybody tonight. All right. Thank you, Vedic Warrior. Yeah, we've had some real interesting interchanges on Twitter, too. Okay. Hey, you say, I never liked this place for 62 years. Well, I got to admit, we're sharing this place with a lot of... I'd like to say that they're in their stages of development, and that's why it's the way it is. And that's kind of how I've tried to explain it. But that doesn't mean we have to be victims of what they're doing. We can stand up for ourselves and say no. Yeah, we might pay a price, especially when they control the halls of power. But just because they haven't developed to the point where they have a conscience doesn't mean that we have to submit ourselves to that. But we are here to see what that's like and to see if we can overcome it. Belief and faith are active, actionable. They're things that you do. Again, if Jesus did it all for us, then why even be here in the first place? Just so God can prove his mercy? Seems like to me that's awfully egotistical, and I don't think God's like that. This has to be looked at more as a school, not a place. Not saying that God won't be merciful and help those out who have, done the good fruits, and maybe recycle those that didn't. I'm not, I don't know. There are indications that that's what it is. Without sinning, you can't not sin, Sparky's Run. Sorry, can't do it. If you think you can do it without sinning, you don't believe the scriptures. Okay, you totally misunderstood them. Yeah, Raven Lee Wolfhard. Yeah, exactly. Uh, Jesus showed us the way, and of course, we don't need to get into who I think the Jesus really was. I think I've talked about that quite a bit in the past, and it's in my book. Okay. Lori Tillman, yeah, I believe this is a place, and when I say it's a school that we have experience, we're finding out who we are. We really judge ourselves. I've told you before, the same sage that I talked to, and this has been my experience now from looking at things. The question is, how does God know who should be in heaven? They show up. And as I explained the other day, birds of the feather flock together. Pardon my nose, it's itching. We've got a storm here, it's blowing up dust again. Um, you'll go where you're naturally comfortable. If you want to be like this, if you want to be with people like this guy in the Navy who's now the new poster child for recruitment, who, likes to wear, skirts and stuff, if that's where you want to go, I'll say, okay, fine, do it. That's not eternal life, and eternal life doesn't mean forever life, although it is that too. It means God's life. When it talks about eternal judgment, eternal life, it's the real thing that it's saying there is God's judgment, God's life. So we're eternal in the sense that, we exist. We've probably existed before, obviously, and we're going to exist later. But how do we exist? Are we going to be like the naval recruitment guy, or the guys that are out there, Jeffrey Epstein's island? You read between the lines here. Are we going to be like that? Or are we going to do what I think we're brought here to do, and that is to develop these relationships, these very good and healthy relationships, wives, husbands, sons, daughters, uncles, fathers, mothers, dad. You get the idea? And that's where we go from there. And that's why I say don't put those things down, because they're really all that matters. When you leave here, you're not going to think about your job, your money. You're going to say, where's Ethel? I want to see Ethel. I'm using some old TV series names here, but in my case, Carol. And if that isn't where we're all going, if that isn't God's life, then I'm not really all that upset going to some far reach of the universe and just sitting in some little dark corner and saying, fine. And you say, well, that's rebellious. No, it's because it's in my heart. And if the love that you're supposed to have for your closest intimate loves isn't like that, and people say, well, no, you got to love Jesus first. Well, that's why I say Jesus is a principle more than a person. You are to take the name of Jesus on you and do the same things he did to get where he went, and that we will do greater things than that, which he said we do, because he's going to the Father. And he was very adamant about the male-female relationship. When he said, there's no marriage in the resurrection, he was talking about those Sadducees who didn't believe it in the first place. It was a play on what they didn't want to hear, number one. Number two, if you want to take it to the other side of that, you develop those relationships here. And then the other secret is, what was Eve like before she was told that she would have her desire only to her husband? I'm not going to get into it any further than that tonight. Clifton James Kelly, you think I need to be exercised? Well, first of all, you better start spelling it right. That's not how you spell it. Well, okay. Gypsies, he says, or she says, I am the Lord, beside me there is no Savior, Isaiah 43:11. Okay. How would a Muslim look at that? How would a Native American look at that? Their gods tell them they're the only gods. So it's nothing special that the God of the Bible says he's the only one. But he also says that there are other gods. So you get to choose. Just because somebody tells you they're the only God doesn't make it so. It's really not that easy. Yeah, I'm not much into pork and shellfish. Yeah, I don't think they're good for you, and I think pork especially has a problem because of the DNA similarities between humans. That's Baba Joe who's saying that. Clifton James, no, lots of laugh. I don't mind you disagreeing, but you better be able to say something a little more than accusing me of having to be exercised. I could have you thrown out of here for that. Would you like that? You're not reasoning with me. You're not giving me substance. All you're doing is using pejoratives and accusations. And I don't care if Felicia Lockhart and Jesse want to throw you off, because that's one thing we don't do here. You don't see me doing it, and I don't expect you to. So, um, Clifton James Kelly, mind your manners. You're in my house. If you don't like what I say, you open your own house on YouTube and you give your side of the story. But if you're going to come here and talk to me, you better use intelligence, reason, and logic, and not resort to pejoratives and accusations. So if they throw you off, sayonara. I'm not going to do it, not tonight. If you show up again, I might. Yeah, I think Lori Tillman, the old Greek stories of the man beast things, I think there's a real reason for that. I think that we're seeing it happen today, right? We have these hybrids today. We think that the ancients were stupid. I don't think so. I think history is quite a bit different than what we've been told. People even talk about the Atari and those kinds of things. I'm not sure about that, but certainly they were experimenting with this thing. It's why God said you have sex with a horse or a beast or whatever, you're to be killed, and the beast too, because that's so wicked, that's so evil. So it wouldn't surprise me that the pigs are a result of that. I wouldn't. Matter of fact, I think I've said before, science says that we're closer chromosome-wise to swine than we are to chimpanzees, right? So saying that we descended from chimpanzees, the simians, can't possibly be true. The chromosomes don't match up, but they do with pigs. Whoa. Yeah, I agree, Rebecca Ann. I mean, to think that some of the, and I can't disagree with that. And again, as an historian, I know there's some problems here. I see some gaps that don't make any sense. Building these cathedrals and things in the Renaissance when they only had horse and buggies, the pyramids, the magnificent cathedrals and things, and buildings, the architecture of the 14, 15, 1600s, and even earlier, the Romans. I know. Who built those? I don't think we don't do that. We couldn't do that today, by and large. The artisanship, the craftsmanship, what were the tools they used? Michelangelo, at least it's attributed to him, his sculptures in marble. And I saw one the other day on Twitter where, and I forget the name of the sculptor, and I apologize for that. There were actually two of them who did sculptures of women in veils, and the marble is sculpted to look like a veil. I don't think we have people today that could do that. So where did they learn that? Now, I might be saying something that's a little outlandish, but I don't think our history is what we've been told it is. And I see anomalies. I do. I'll just leave it at that. Yeah, God's law doesn't change useless knowledge. I agree with that. If he did, if God's law changes, then we can't trust him. You know, he says he's the same yesterday. This is biblical, of course, but there are some other things too. The same today for yesterday, today, and tomorrow, forever, right? Otherwise, you can't trust him. And so I believe that too. I think that there are differences in what we do. For instance, just because Noah was commanded to build an ark doesn't mean you should. You know, that was to him. Gideon going and fighting the enemy, that was to him at that point in time. Whatever. So yeah. Well, that's interesting, Vedic warrior. Graham Hancock has opened a whole new vista on history, starting with Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. Yeah. Okay. Well, look, everybody, it's been an hour and whoa, almost an hour and 30 minutes, hour and a half. I wanted to come on tonight to make sure that I covered the few things that I did. I thought people might want to be asking about war with Taiwan, war with China over Taiwan, the inundation on our southern border, the failing of the banks, possible escalating war in Europe and with Russia, the IRS, what they're doing, the people of January 6th who have been thrown in prison for merely as Judge Napolitano said, they didn't even break a law because they never did the first thing to go towards their supposed plan. And worse than that, it was something they couldn't have accomplished in the first place. So everything that we're seeing happen is to force you to believe evil is the right way. And if you won't do that, you deserve to be imprisoned or destroyed. See the real Jesus here? It's in your heart, it's in your mind. The kingdom of God is within you. And if you don't resonate with that, then you're with these people that are really evil and wicked. If you do resonate with that and you try to do the right thing, what does it say will happen to you? They will persecute you. They will even think they do God a favor by killing you. And their God, of course, Moloch, Baphomet. You would say Lucifer, that's not his name, but I'll just say that. Look at the Hollywood people and the signals that they give each other. And a lot of those things were actually stolen from God's code. The rainbow, for instance. Now look who's got the rainbow as their symbol. And so now does that mean it's evil? Well, maybe in another 50 years, even the rainbow in the Bible that God said he put there as a covenant will be considered evil because of the misunderstanding today. So the 666, the pyramid, the square, the circle, all these things that are associated with Satanism, the evil side absconded with God's system and then twists it. So it doesn't necessarily mean it's evil. You got to look into it deeper than that. I pointed out a really good one for you once. Picture of Baphomet doing this. As above, so below. Everybody says, oh, that's so satanic, that's so satanic. Where did they get that and how did they twist it? They got it from Jesus' prayer. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. What they're saying they want to do, however, how they've twisted it, is not the male-female relationship, unless it's degraded somehow in the way they do things. What they're talking about is becoming like the fallen angels that are now denied those opportunities to have mates, or like the angels that were created to be just that and not begotten sons and daughters of God. In other words, they want to take from you what they can't have. We don't need to fall for that. But you see how they take God's stuff and they twist it. The 666. Does anybody know what that is in Hebrew? There's a common energy drink now that uses that symbol on their cans. Anybody know who it is? Yeah, they're destroying God's work, Greg Welch. Very good. Yeah. Well, I'll just say it. It's on the monster drinks. It's 3 Vavs, which is 666. Oh, that's so satanic. Yeah, the way they use it, they've twisted God's truth. But do you know any place else where there were 3 nails? That's what a Vav is. It's a nail. Any place else where there are 3 nails used? I'll go ahead and tell you. When Jesus was crucified, 3 nails, right? 1, 2, and then in the feet. Both feet, put it over and a nail there. The 3, the 666. So what do you do with that? You see, they take God's things and they twist it. They take the male-female relationship and they degrade it. They cause fighting between men and women. The women want power. They go against God's order, the natural order. The rainbow, one of the most beautiful things that you can see, is now associated with debauchery. And I could go on and on and on. Keep your eyes on the horizon, your ears to the ground, situational awareness on high. Prep, pray, stay out of the way. That doesn't mean you can't defend yourselves. We are considered the people as a whole, even those like Antifa and all those that are being used by the system. The system wants them destroyed too, not just you. They want them all destroyed. They're just the tool, using them as a tool to do it. So just get ready as best you can. Get a small group of people that you can trust. And I say this every single time. Y'all take care. I hope you have a good night. Next time.